I love your home already, and I haven't even seen it. Does that sound crazy? It's not. When we improve our surroundings, we simultaneously empower ourselves, which means every inch of space within your reach right now is an opportunity to tell the story you want to be living. Tell me that's not its own kind of wonderful. I have spent the last 15 years consulting clients and their homes through the wisdom of Feng Shui, intentional design, and some crystal clear communication. And you know what happens when you bring those three together? Life-changing magic. Your home is already in a conversation with you, so why not learn how to merge that awareness with some simple, straightforward, and smart action to co-create the life you want? I'm Amanda Gibby Peters, and I'm here to help you learn how. Welcome to House Therapy. I want to talk today about something that I don't think gets said quite enough in Feng Shui conversations and circles. And it's this. Feng Shui is not a practice or even a suggestive guidebook that helps us achieve a perfect outcome. Life is going to be messy with or without Shui. And Feng Shui isn't a wisdom in manufacturing perfection, sidestepping problems, or sparing ourselves of lessons. It's there to help us mindfully and deliberately create the most supportive environment for us, no matter the weather we're in. So why am I talking about this? Well, Feng Shui, the practice of it, influences the energy happening around and within us. And that shift will often trigger a change. But because of how often the word luck is associated with Feng Shui, I myself once paired it with that term all the time. There is an unspoken assumption that the opportunities or changes triggered will be positive, feel good, welcome, exciting, all of the above. And while I can almost guarantee Shui will trigger change, I can equally say it often looks differently than we'd like. And sometimes those changes start with a headwind instead of a tailwind. And because I also know that first pull into Feng Shui for so many people is usually an attempt to protect themselves from some perceived fear or sense of lack, this can provoke disappointment with Feng Shui. We would prefer to simply move some furniture or buy a few quick fixes and voila, good luck will come knocking. And listen, that sometimes does happen. In fact, that beginner's luck is usually great for clients, but sometimes a nightmare for practitioners because now the bar has been set. Clients only want that rush of success moving forward when they work with Shui. But here's what else I know. Realistically, this work might bring up unfinished business or conversations or projects that we're resisting or avoiding. Sometimes it can feel like so much hard work, like, why am I even doing this? And the answer to that is, listen, it usually took a minute for things to get the way they are, so it might take a minute to get the knots out and that energy moving a different direction too. Sometimes Shui can instigate what feels like a stroke of bad luck. And when I was a brand new practitioner, this kind of result would freak me out, understandably. In fact, I even stopped space clearing businesses for a hot minute because it seemed every time I did one of those consults, there was turnover, something that the client wasn't expecting and I didn't think or really even know to prepare them for. That's why experience in these situations matters so much. These early experiences in my own practitioner journey had me determined to figure out what I was doing wrong because that's what I thought it was initially, my fault. And I wanted to stop this downward trend from happening. And that's when I came to realize this. One, we don't often come to Shui right away. Oftentimes, it's when our familiar coping skills have ceased working. Maybe things have been troublesome for more than a minute and we need a break, some magic, a miracle of sorts. And in that surrender of what we think is possible, Shui can usher in some quick relief. Again, that beginner's luck, because we have no idea what to expect. There is no, this is how it has to happen, getting in our way. And two, when we get that reprieve, we set our eyes on where this practical magic can help us more. And in the work there, what gets triggered can sometimes feel titanic at first, because the change can begin with asking us to address what needs our attention, releasing what is no longer working, or even confronting whatever has been chronically getting in our way. So that's how I learned to start explaining this work as triggering an opportunity, meaning you have to be willing to say yes to the assignment that shows up, even when it's not exciting or sexy or remotely matching what you had in mind. Now, I have so many stories about how this played out in real life for many of my clients, but here is one that really illustrates this well. So I have a client who owns several businesses, and I feng shui those businesses every year. And these clients in this particular year had their eyes on some big goals, more visibility being one of them. So we made deliberate changes to their spaces to trigger that opportunity. Now, shortly after my consult, there were some unexpected changes in the city that trickled down and affected their staff, and they lost quite a bit of their employees. When this happened, I'm not going to lie, it was intense. Losing a significant number of employees in one fell swoop is a white knuckle turbulence. It felt like a crushing blow to their goals and their morale, especially on the heels of a new year and a feng shui consult. And I distinctly remember how upsetting it was. And honestly, I didn't know how we'd reach cruising altitude again, but I knew we would, because I had been through these types of the sky is falling situations before. And what ultimately and rather quickly transpired was this: they were able to restaff promptly, and that process went so much more smoothly than expected. And within months of this unwelcome, out of nowhere challenge, their businesses were receiving the best online reviews ever. And because of that, they had their best summer season on financial record ever too. So let's recap. We shuied for more visibility. We got it, but not the way my clients would have preferred it, and it cost them staff initially. But in the vein of visibility, they were able to attract new employees that came on, adjusted quickly, and had them earning more reviews and money than predicted. Without this release of the old to make room for the new, that outcome would have stayed out of reach. Another way that shui triggers opportunities is when we need to mitigate a challenge, invite some help in, or even find a way to summon enough energy to get through the next day. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because, again, shui is so often associated with luck that we forget that a little better, whether that's relief, help, guidance, or even a moment's reprieve, can make a really big difference during the darkest of times. So for this story, I'm going to dip into my own experience. So a couple years ago, pre-COVID, I found myself sitting in a doctor's office. One of our daughters was sick, and every word that was leaving her doctor's mouth was pivoting me further away from where I thought we were headed. I, at the time, was finalizing my book. I had several trips planned, including a couple big ones in LA to be on a few morning shows, and we were on the brink of another busy holiday season. And instead, I was hearing about a diagnosis that I didn't want anything to do with, and the doctor was telling me the path ahead was going to require everything we had, and that most days it was probably not going to feel like nearly enough. She also explained that the course of treatment that we needed was going to be super expensive, and she strongly encouraged that one of us, my husband or I, take time off to manage the care plan that she was going to recommend. And he had just started a new job, so I canceled my trips. I rescheduled whatever offered wiggle room, and I handed the book off to my designer, praying that the edits we had done last were good enough. And I started learning everything I could about this new unwanted presence now in our lives. Now, this story isn't mine to tell. You can probably tell. It's for one of my lovelies to share when she wants. So the details here are ambiguous intentionally, and they're also not really the point of this story. After leaving the doctor's office that day, I took a few more days to process this heaviness. And then I shuied every part of our home that I knew could help us trigger the opportunities that I thought we needed, but more importantly, the ones I didn't even know yet we would need. So to give you an idea, I had our windows cleaned so we could easily see help available. This also ensured I was taking in all the perspectives that could help, not just my own. I purged the center of our home so that the treatments and support could be fully received. And it was also a way of bringing all of our family energy to this, making healing and recovery the center of attention. We cooked every night using recipes that required both the stove and oven to stimulate our collective well-being. I space cleared, and this wasn't to make the negative of our situation just magically go away, but to make the inevitable cleanup of the challenge we were going to be in a little easier for us all. And I topped everything off by placing these large pieces of rose quartz throughout our home. So here's a whole truth. For a couple years, I didn't go to bed ever completely carefree, but, and this is what I hope you hear and take away, I woke up every morning with precisely enough to handle what came our way that day. The right people were always showing up at precisely the right time. And I can look back today on where we were with a full heart because we did come through it. And to say we made it wasn't ever a guarantee on the table. In a recent follow-up visit with her doctor, my daughter was given a pretty clean bill of health. And I came home and I thanked my house, with flowers, of course, for sheltering us and holding us up in what was truly the hardest thing that I have ever been through. After stepping into Shui and steeping in its practice personally, and I'd say the same holds true for every client, home, and life I'm invited into, I can say this almost unanimously. The results post-consult often exceed what we thought would and could happen, even if what is triggered doesn't look or feel or seem remotely like what we were after. Shui is both toolbox and tools. It is intention and action. It is wisdom and practice. And it is a life skill that can make all the difference in your home and life. And while the wins are always welcome and wowza, I find that no matter the situation, when we look back, because at some point there is usually a little reflection, that little pivot towards Shui in the hardest of times, or staying with it when nothing seems to be going right, is often the very thing that seemed to have softened the sharp edges and, in a way, saved the day. And that's our episode, my loves. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to head over to simpleshui.com if you're craving a bigger serving of house love. And if you like what you're hearing, I hope you follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you love what you're learning, will you leave me a review? Your note will totally make my day and help even more people find the show. Have a fabulous day, and I can't wait to meet you back here next week.